composer Zach Heyde. Hey, composer Zach Heyde here, and today we're talking about piano arranging. So specifically, arranging for four-hand piano. Some of you may know me from Frank and Zach piano duets, and that's kind of why I made this video. This was part of a Twitch stream where I'm chatting about some beginner tips as to how to actually arrange for four hands. As always, if you find the video helpful, do leave a like at the end and subscribe for more content. The way that we've always approached it is thinking about the different roles that each hand could have. Typically, music is going to have melody, it's going to have harmony, it's going to have bass, and it's going to have some kind of rhythm or movement to it. So four hands, four roles, you can kind of split them out, and that's a really simplistic way to do it. So let's just look at a couple examples and how we could then invert some of the roles. Let's do a nursery rhyme. Mary Had a Little Lamb, just because it's going to be easy. So first. I know this is the boring part. So that's primo part. Now, that's primo just doing the right hand. So what you can do is you can actually start from the outsides and work in. And that helps because it helps you define kind of your borders for your piece. So if we start with the melody, then we'll move over to the bass and do that with the left hand of the secondo. We're just gonna keep it really simple and easy, and we're just gonna do some sort of a walking, like a bouncing thing. So here we go. Okay, so now you have your borders for your piece, basically. You can have everything to work in between. So if you look in like the piano roll, for example, if you use something like Logic or another DAW, you can see that we have this range to work with in between. And this range is basically just working here. Now, if that range was too small, then you could just simply move the melody up or move the bass down, which in this case would not work. But we're just gonna start with this range to see what we can work with. Now we need to have some kind of interest on the inside, and this is where the arranging gets more intricate. Let's first start off by adding maybe a harmony, and we'll have the harmony be done first, in this example, by the primo again. So primo's playing this with the right hand. So we're gonna have the left hand actually play this and come up with some harmonies in between. Now this is a harmony of a sixth. You can also do harmonies in some cases in thirds. But in this case, I think a sixth is gonna sound better. Now, of course, you could probably do this if you were more experienced with one hand, but we'll get into that and expand it a little bit more as we go. Okay, so again, I just basically harmonized it by sixths, and then when I wanted to and thought it was appropriate, I swapped over to thirds. So now all that's left is the secondo right hand, which is like our third voice as we go down. You could probably tell what would be appropriate. We have this kind of, right? Some offbeats would be really nice to offset that. So we have to again make sure that we're not interfering with anything. So think about where the range of the left hand of primo went. That was here. That was last note. So we can't get to that E. We have to go anywhere above that. So let's do this. And when we change our chords, we're gonna change downwards so that we don't get too close to the primo. Okay, and so already we have like, this is, I guess, level one of arranging, where we're basically splitting out all these roles. Let's say we want to add a little bit more interest into this. So there's a bunch of ways we could do this. We could have, for example, the right hand of primo take both of these parts, and I think it would be totally fine and doable. So let's first do that, and now we're going to pretend that primo is doing both of this with one hand. Let's keep these roles the same for now. And so now we have extra space in the middle somewhere, basically, to add something new. Now, actually, what I think is going to be more appropriate, because this range is really squashed together, we don't have much room here. So what we could do is actually give that part that the primo is doing to all of its left hand. So left hand is now playing that, which is again playable. You do this. right? And now we can actually add a counterpoint or some kind of movement on the top with the primo's right hand. For contrast, you want to try and find rhythms if you're trying to add more movement that contrast everything else that's going on. Here we've got a lot of quarter notes, right? So we want to maybe add some eighth notes. So da 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 da. So we're gonna do that. Basically some constantly moving eighth notes. So. Okay, so kind of just made that up, but you'll see now that the arrangement has a little bit more expansion to it, right? So. Etc. So, all right, we're adding to it a little bit. Now, what if we wanted to actually flip the roles of these players, okay? So we don't always have to have the melody on the top. Let's give the secondo the melody this time. Let's have the melody be in the left hand. And see how we'd have to adjust the rest of the arrangement. So we'll start with that. Okay, and you notice the characteristic of that is a bit funnier, right? It almost sounds a little bit kind of goofy just because of the register. Okay, now we have to be careful because we don't want to cloud up wherever the melody is. So we could do this, but it's gonna be too similar to the other one. So let's actually flip the roles. Let's give that to the primo left hand. Actually, let's give it to the primo right hand, maybe up here, just to really expand the register, so. You see how the characteristic of it changes even though the roles are exactly the same? Now let's add some new roles. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna add just a little new counter melody in the primo left hand, so. Okay, so this is kind of how like Frank and I will work with these arrangements, and what you might have to do is change the notes a little bit depending on the melody. So I always try and look at the counterpoint against the melody and see what's happening. If you look, you can make sure that there's no clash as you play through it. You'd want to kind of like really pay attention and solo that section. So what I mean by clash is basically if you played something like, right? And in the top you had an E against a D. That's actually gonna clash a little bit. Now, because the registers are so far apart, you don't notice it as much, but if I played it here, then you actually would hear that clash a little bit more. Clashing can be avoided again by aiming for thirds in harmony and sixths, or octaves and unisons. You'll generally be okay too. Next, we gotta figure out what the secondo right hand is gonna do. So, the melody, the counter melody, and the harmony are all kind of short, right? So I would actually aim for something that feels kind of slurred to keep basically like some glue for the whole arrangement of that part. So let's just try something like that. Okay, this is not my favorite version of the arrangement, but you can see how the roles can be flipped and it still works. In fact, what I would probably do in this instance is I would actually just have the melody be supported in octaves. Like that. And if you pay attention to the registers, you wanna make sure that there's nothing too empty. So this register is actually kind of empty, so you could do one of two things. Take the secondo and move it up an octave so there's an octave split between them. You see it kind of fills in the melody. Or you could take that little counterpoint in the primo part and move that down an octave. But you'll notice that what happens with that is it actually obscures the melody. So I think the first choice is better. of keeping this up higher and moving this. Generally, you want to have a lot of space in the low area of your arrangements because of harmonic buildup, which I've talked about in other videos. You can see that. As you can see here, the widest interval we've got is actually when it's the lowest. And as we get higher and higher, that interval gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, moving right along, let's add a little bit more interest here. So there's a bunch of ways we could do that. One way would be reharmonization, which I've talked about, but I'll kind of demonstrate very quickly so you can see. So reharmonization is going to be basically changing the harmonies. The harmonic rhythm can be increased so we can have more harmonic changes, and that'll add more interest. So let's take our melody just for expedience, and let's see if we can come up with harmonies that are a little bit quicker. So I would work this stuff out beforehand. Okay, so like I would sketch this. So I would probably do something to this effect. That's actually not too bad. Now, you always want to make, when you're making an arrangement, try and focus on one element at a time. So like if we're doing reharmonization and that's the thing we're doing for the arrangement, you don't want to then clutter that up with thinking, how can I make all this movement? How can I do this and that? How can I add a counterpoint? Because your audience needs to focus on one thing. And good arranging is about giving your audience a focal point for your music. So if this is the thing, don't go too crazy with adding more to this. It might just be a matter of expanding this out into the other voices. So maybe you would just take this melody, have it be played in octaves, and then take this and add more movement to that by doing just some sort of arpeggio, like this is a common pattern I do where you basically hold the top note and then arpeggiate down. So and in the left hand, you add some sort of an extra movement to that. To show you how that pattern would work, it'd be like this. So that's how we work with something like that. Let's lastly touch on some more like advanced stuff. So hand crossing and glissandi and how you approach those in four-hand arrangements. When you're doing hand crossing, you have to obviously figure out where that's gonna happen. So in any of these examples, we could flip those ideas over from left to right in terms of the hands. But if you're working with an actual player, you wanna make sure there's time to do that. So oftentimes what that's gonna involve is a little bit of space to prepare for it. So usually like a quarter note in this instance, like if we were working with this example and we were about to do a hand crossing, we would do dun, 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 dun. And then you need that quarter to switch. If you don't get that quarter to switch, it's gonna be extremely difficult, and I guarantee you're gonna bump hands or clip nails or whatever. Not clip nails, but you know what I mean. It's gonna be painful. I've had many times where I have stabbed Frank with my fingernails because we didn't have time to prepare. So, and with glissandi, remember, of course, that really usually one player is gonna do the glissandi, or if two players are gonna do it, you're gonna have one from the middle and one from the very bottom, or the reverse, one from the middle and one from the top. And you would do something like this, right? Try not to destroy my mic. One from the top, like this, or one like this. Or you could do the opposite direction. So, out or in. You can't be playing anything else in the meantime while you're doing that unless you're out of the way of that glissandi. So you could do, you know, something like this and get into your idea. But you want to make sure that you're aware of those ranges and staying out of the way. Hopefully you found some of these preliminary tips helpful. If you want to see a part 2, let me know in the comments, and I might make another expansion on this, talking about some more advanced piano arranging techniques. But for now, if you enjoyed it, please do leave a like, subscribe for more, and if you want to support me, you can check out Patreon, which is linked in the description.